Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Peach Pundit Podcast. I'm Jason Pye, joined, as always, by my wonderful friends and awesome Peach Pundit contributors, Scott Turner and Buzz Brockway. Guys,
yo,
what up?
Hey,
it's
buddy.
been like we took a week, like we inadvertently took a week off last week, basically. It's kind of how it all worked out. It's like,
yeah,
I think Buzz was somewhere in another part of the country. Were you in Austin?
I was in Austin, Texas. They were keeping it weird.
As Austin does.
Heritage Foundation Resource Bank event.
And then Scott and I were sad because we didn't get to mouth off about Georgia politics and argue with each other for an hour.
Preparing for the state GOP convention down in Jekyll Island.
Well, which brings me to my first topic on the list of things I would like to discuss today, because I disconnected this weekend. I had some stuff going on around the house, trying to get to the point where I can finish my privacy fence in my backyard and get it all built. You guys want to come help? Once again, I'll extend the offer.
No.
Come on down. I'll buy pizza. I'll buy beer.
Friends don't ask friends to build fences.
Free beer, Scott.
No.
So the one thing I saw from the Republican convention this weekend, it was all over Twitter, was that Brian Kemp was booed. And I didn't see anything about cheers until maybe a little bit later, but he was eventually cheered. But he was initially booed by the delegates at the state convention. So Scott, since you were there and Buzz and I weren't, why don't you tell us what happened?
Yeah, I mean, basically what you saw. I mean, I think a couple of the AJC reporters posted videos on their Twitter feeds. They were there. I was standing near them for a few of the speeches, specifically when Vernon Jones spoke. However, the initial greeting for Governor Kemp was very loud booing. I mean, there is no getting around it. There's no spinning it. People booed him. The only thing to keep in mind there is that is, I think, my sixth convention that I've been to, and almost universally, people boo various elected officials. I remember Governor Deal almost getting booed off the stage in Macon one year. I was a sergeant at arms at that convention for endorsing one of the candidates in the chairman's race at the time. And he did legitimately get booed off the stage. And
I remember that.
Yeah. I mean, I was standing right. I was working the stage, and he got booed off the stage. So Nathan Deal was reelected in a landslide in the Republican primary. He did get primaried, and he did win handily. Then
Saxby Chambliss and
Saxby Chambliss
have both been booed.
I've never seen the GOP convention ever welcome Saxby Chambliss with anything other than boos.
That's true.
Right. Johnny Isaacson is one of the most beloved Republicans in Georgia political history. Booed. So I don't know that it's a bad sign, honestly. There's always the only.
So what you're saying is a prominent Republican politician in Georgia who is not booed, you should worry.
If I were, no, not necessarily, but it is something that it don't take it as seriously as the media wants to make it. The media wants to blow it up and say, oh, he was booed relentlessly. Well, he wasn't booed relentlessly, because once he actually started speaking, and he started speaking very passionately about his record, people began to cheer. And I believe that the cheers overtook the boos, and almost to a point where it was intentional. The people who supported in the room were trying to drown out the boos. And so it actually became very difficult to hear him speak. I was sitting in the back of the room at the time. I had not been elevated to delegate status yet. So I was waiting for the credentials report before I could move up. And from my sense, was that the cheers began overtaking him, especially when he uttered this specific line, which is, "I'm the only person in this state who has ever beaten Stacey Abrams."
My understanding, he also got an applause line when he said Georgia was the first state to reopen from COVID.
Yeah, there were a lot of, that was another thing about the convention. Nearly 2,000 delegates there, all told. There would be a few hundred more people who were either guests or just kind of floating around, or people who had booze, that kind of stuff. Not a single mask, unless you were a hotel or a convention staff. I didn't see any masks, and there was not a huge outbreak from what I can tell coming out of the convention.
I mean, it would still be early. I mean, from coming out of the convention, we're only.
It's Wednesday. The convention ended on Saturday, so people would start.
The bigger question, Scott, is, did people have spoons or keys or other metal objects stuck to them? Because we're learning that might be a thing.
Well, I would also
Magnetism.
venture to guess that the majority of the people in that particular crowd have not been jabbed. So, they're not going to have magnetized vaccine in the phone. We're joking, people. We're joking. If you're listening to this right now, you're taking us seriously.
I mean, we're not joking about the people in that particular room.
I don't want somebody to think I'm walking away saying that the vaccine magnetizes you. That's all.
Yeah, the vaccine.
You two jokers can do what you want. I don't want it. I don't want this clipped in my future political career. Somebody says, "Well, Scott said it's a joke."
Wait, Buzz. He just said future political career. He's leaving the door open. That is news.
You're welcome, America.
News made on the Peach Pundit podcast.
You are welcome, America.
Scott Turner did not close the door to running for higher office.
Here, and as I'm saying that, let me take a sip of my bourbon from my favorite coffee mug here.
So one of the things also that came from the convention this weekend, and I got a couple more things to touch on here, but Jody Heiss was there, who I still to this day do not understand why he is running for Secretary of State and leaving a lifetime seat in Congress. And maybe if he stays long enough, he will eventually be ranking member or chairman of the Oversight Committee. But that's neither here nor there. My understanding is he had a lovely pen that was given out to delegates this weekend. Scott's going to show us it says Boot Brad. That is what the pen says. For those of you who are listening rather than watching, it is a boot that has Heiss's logo at the top, and at the bottom it says Boot Brad.
It is a cowboy boot, not a combat boot, but a cowboy boot, and it says, Heiss Secretary of State at the top and Boot Brad at the bottom.
I don't get.
Can you wear one of those while listening to Brad Came Down to Georgia that David Belle Isle put out this weekend?
Stop ruining good song. I don't even like country music, and that's I recognize that The Devil Came Down to Georgia is a good song.
It is. It's the song that put me on the path towards using profanity on a regular basis. But David Belle Isle.
Your mom listens to this podcast, Scott. So
who does?
Now, your mom, right? So now she knows.
She does. But she knows because she took me to my first concert, which was Charlie Daniels in Cincinnati, Ohio. Absolutely.
Okay.
So and then I saw Charlie Daniels came to Woodstock, Georgia, a couple years ago before he passed away. And I took my family and continued the tradition. However, he had taken the SOB phrase out of the song.
I told you once, you son of a bitch, I'm the best it's ever been.
and he made it son of a gun for the Woodstock, Georgia crowd.
Well, there was a conversion to Christianity in there.
I mean, you got to keep it clean for the kids who show up.
It wasn't so much the video, which had great production value, by the way. I don't know how much money David Belle Isle spent on the video.
Too much.
Making that song. It was the intro video that he personally made and features himself in that I took exception with, because it's very clear he's going to try to paint Brad as a corrupt person who sold himself out. And that, I saw David Belle Isle and I just kind of said hi. I'm not excited by that. I thought better of David Belle Isle, frankly. I thought he was a strong candidate the first time around, but I didn't end up voting for him in the primary or the runoff. Obviously, the person that's on the podcast here was my first choice.
I mean, Buzz. I mean, there was that. I mean, Buzz was a good candidate. I mean, Buzz, you remember bumping into us at the Georgia Tech game?
I do.
Actually, it was the Georgia Tech game, and
it was.
Yes. Let me ask you, who won that game?
I think they called the game off. I think it was canceled.
Listen, Jason, he lost the election. You got to kick him about a football game too. You're just a bastard.
Yeah, I am.
Look, I continue to thank the Lord every day. Speaking of country music, right? Garth Brooks had a song, "Thank God for Unanswered Prayers." I thank the Lord that my prayers to become Secretary of State were unanswered.
So let me say, because I think if I were faced with voting in this primary today, I would skip it. I cannot vote for I can't vote for Raffensperger because he's just done such a terrible. I mean, just generally speaking, he's hired bad people. He's done a bad job.
Has he though?
I mean, I think he has, but I judge that. I judge that based on some of the liberties he took with with the election, and I understand why he took those liberties. I'm probably more understanding than most people. But that said, he has hired some people, and he's not willing to hold them accountable for mistakes they make. That is why I think he's done a bad job. Two, Heiss, I don't understand what purpose he serves in this race other than to say Brad Raffensperger is bad. And Belle Isle just seems like, well, I didn't get it the first time. People don't like Raffensperger, so maybe I'll get it this time.
The Brad is bad meme that is in the Republican Party amongst the grassroots activists was the theme of the weekend. All you had to do to get a cheer was say something about Brad Raffensperger, and people would cheer. And everybody did it just about. It was especially David Schaefer. He was constantly bashing on Brad.
I've heard Schaefer give a speech to the Gwinnett GOP convention and say, if it weren't for Brad Raffensperger, Trump would have won Georgia.
It's
applause.
It is a lie to say that, though. It's a lie to say that, and I'm tired. That's the thing you won't get me to agree with. Like, I don't agree with that.
Well, if I could, there's a school of thought that you just mentioned. Frankly, some of the things that he did proactively, like sending out the liberties he took to send out absentee ballot applications to every registered voter, even those who are no longer eligible to vote in Georgia. Those types of things could potentially lead one to believe that if he hadn't done those things, Trump may have won, because there's this thing called the rollover list. And once you sign up for an absentee ballot, all you have to do is check a box, and the rollover list automatically.
There's certain conditions, right? Not every citizen. You have to be over
military,
65,
overseas, retiree. So all that to say, I mean, even you recognize that he took certain liberties.
So he did take certain liberties,
right?
But none of them were in violation of statute, from what I can tell. You and I have had that conversation off podcast about that.
Sure. But the argument that I think you'll hear out of the Raffensperger camp once the campaign gets ramped up is, if I didn't do it for every county, then the Democrats were going to do it in DeKalb and in Fulton. And then you would have only had DeKalb and Fulton. The locals would have taken over. They would have sent out the absentee ballot applications without the other counties having a fair shot at that process. And so he's going to point out at the end of the day that he did that to try to keep things even amongst all the counties. Sort of a due process, equal protection type of move on his part.
Well, look, it did lead to the situation where by the time the U.S. Senate runoff rolls around, you had about 650,000 people that automatically received a ballot. And I guarantee you most of those were Democrats, only because, and this is where I think it's not Brad's fault. It's Trump's fault, because Trump had been talking down absentee balloting all this time. The GOP and affiliated organizations had practically no effort put practically no effort into reaching those voters, or reaching their voters and saying, hey, look, you can vote absentee, and you can check that little box if you qualify, and you can get a ballot automatically. Clearly Democrats did, and that gave them a huge advantage.
And I will continue to insist that the main reason Republicans lost Georgia, lost both Senate seats, were, one, they had terrible candidates at the top of the ticket, that being Trump, that being Loeffler, and that being Perdue, and two, they have not caught up. They have not realized the demographic problem, or if they have realized the demographic problem, they constantly downplay it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's no silver bullet, Jason. And there was a whole bunch of different things, and it was little things that were paper cuts that ended up slicing off a finger.
One of the things I'll also add, does anybody else find it interesting? By the way, Donald Trump will not be president in August. I just want to make sure everybody who's listening or watching.
Do we have to say that?
Yes,
we have to say that.
October,
maybe. No, not in October either. Donald Trump will not be president anytime between now and 2020 January 2025, if he decides to run. But did anybody else find it interesting that he left Loeffler off his list?
Mm-hmm.
No, not really.
He said he apparently thinks he's going to be reinstated, and that Purdue's going to be reinstated, and that I think
Martha McSally of all people who got thumped
twice. Yeah. She's been beaten twice.
Yeah,
but he did not mention Loeffler.
I don't find that interesting, because Loeffler failed to follow through with supporting the objections of Jody Heiss and Marjorie Taylor Greene when they objected to Georgia's electoral votes. And so they didn't have a senator sign on. And I can imagine, I don't know this, but I can imagine that Donald Trump thinks that that's a betrayal.
Huh.
Probably so. So any other news, Scott, from the convention this weekend that we should
It
know?
was hot. That's the real thing here. And also the Westin will in fact store your freshly processed wild hog that you shot in the freezer for you while you wait to return home. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's service. So thank you to the Westin at Jekyll Island. I and my family appreciate you for keeping our meat in the freezer there.
So you might need to explain, Scott, prior to the convention, you went down and visited a mutual friend of ours.
Yes.
And went wild hog hunting, right?
I did, yes. And I ended up shooting 2 with 1 bullet.
Performing a service to the farmers of South Georgia.
Absolutely. We picked up a couple of hogs that were tearing up fields down there and processed the meat down in Blakely. And Blakely is far from where I live. And they brought it up for me since we were sharing a room together at the Westin, and the hotel staff were gracious enough to put it on ice for us in the hotel freezer. And apparently it's not an uncommon request for them to store things in the freezer, because they were kind of like, oh yeah, so long as it's, packed up and everything. Well, yeah, that's no problem at all. And they just did it. So
for our
great staff
and northern viewers, wild hogs are a serious problem.
Yes, they are.
All across the South.
Yeah.
They are a menace. They absolutely come in and destroy. They can wipe out a field of farm produce, etc., in no time. And when Scott and I were in the legislature, remember we passed a bill that basically said anytime you see one of these creatures, you can shoot them at any moment. There's no restrictions. Kill the things.
Yeah. Tom McCall had actually said from the well of the House, he was the ag chairman at the time, if you have a bazooka and you want to shoot a bunch of hogs all at one time, you do that.
So moving along, before the convention started, I guess the first day of the convention, we had some pretty big news in the Senate race. As most people know, Republicans are still trying to field a top tier or potential candidate for United States Senate to take on Raphael Warnock in November 2022. As of yet, nobody's really emerged, but we have news in that Agriculture Commissioner Gary Black has decided to run for the nomination, which kind of interesting considering he has been elected statewide 2 or 3 times now, and
I think he's in his third term.
At least 3.
I think he's in his third term too. I couldn't remember. And he is maybe not a top tier candidate, but he is certainly someone with name ID amongst Republican voters in the state.
Yeah. Well, as much as, if you pay attention to the gas pumps and you see Gary Black's signature there, I don't know if people pay attention to that stuff or not. I do, because I'm a nerd, right? But Gary Black has a bit of a libertarian streak in him too. So I think it'll be interesting to see where he goes with his platform.
Yeah. Well, who else do we have right now? Because running in this race, because I have seen so many names, it's hard to keep track of them all lately.
So I saw Kelvin King speak. And he did phenomenal. I mean, he was one of the better speakers for the weekend. He had people cheering for him, and he had a booth and a large presence there. He had a lot of volunteers wearing his swag, if you will, walking around. So Kelvin was there. Latham Sadler was there, and I was trying to meet him, but there was a line to meet him. There are all, a lot of people standing there waiting to actually meet him. And then when I got to go by the booth, he wasn't there. He was attending other functions at the convention. So Latham Sadler and Kelvin King both had spots there.
One of the names I keep hearing pop up is Buddy Carter. And I know we talked about Congressman Carter's potential entrance into this race. And it certainly seems based on, I think I mentioned this before, based on some press releases, his DC congressional office is sending out their red meat conservative, talking points, conservative rhetoric related to that seems to suggest he is running for something. Yeah. And the rumor coming out of DC, and I think this is pretty public here in the state too, is that Carter is just basically waiting for Herschel Walker to say he's not going to run, and then he's going to jump in.
So the speech that Buddy Carter gave to the convention was kind of a milquetoast, run of the mill, not a lot of people on their feet cheering or anything, but it was still a red meat speech. He was there. That's his area. It's no surprise it wasn't a long commute for him to be at Jekyll. That being said, there was a certain amount of buzz amongst people saying that he's gearing up for a campaign. Several people who had been sort of on the Herschel, let's get draft Herschel bandwagon, are sort of thinking about signing up with other folks at this point, because there's been absolutely no mention of Herschel. There was no presence for Herschel at the convention at all. And his name wasn't even mentioned a single time from the stage that I can recall. So I think unless he starts really ramping up, he's not going to be running.
Buzz, is there any reason to believe he's running at all other than media hype?
I honestly, I've started to think that maybe nobody's ever even talked to Herschel about this. I mean, we've heard all sorts of speculation, but we've not heard one thing from Herschel at all about this.
Who lives in Texas? Who lives in Texas?
Sure. And so I don't have any reason to believe he's running.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't either, and it certainly seems like the media fishing expedition on that has kind of played itself out, and maybe is starting to.
In fairness to the media, Trump's the guy who started this.
No, I'm not blaming the media necessarily, but the fact that they keep talking about it, despite the fact that Walker has not said anything, as far as I can tell.
Right.
If he had just shown up to convention this weekend, he would have lit it on fire. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So, but he wasn't there.
And that misses, to me, that like exactly what you said there, Scott. If he was thinking about this, he would have been there, in my mind.
Right.
Yep. No, I agree with you. Is there anything else we're missing in terms of candidates? I mean, looking at politics1.com, there's a list of several Republican candidates, or potential Republican candidates, I should say. Some names I have heard, some names I have not heard, like Earl Earhart, Randy Evans, Melvin Everson, Jack Kingston.
U.S. Senate?
Yeah, for U.S. Senate. This is politics1.com, which keeps track of rumored and declared
the rumor
candidates.
I heard was that Melvin was making calls. Melvin Everson, former state house rep from Gwinnett County.
Great guy.
Yeah, fantastic guy, is actually looking at an LG run. It was the rumor that I heard over the weekend.
And Melvin ran for labor commissioner back 2014, I think.
Yeah, lost to Mark Butler.
Lost to Mark. Yeah, was it 2010?
2010.
Okay, God. All my years are running together. So a couple other interesting names on this list: Marjorie Taylor Greene, which would be interesting, and Austin Scott.
Really, I haven't heard that, but
it's rumored. This is
right.
These are potential candidates, and he's in italics, which means he is just a rumored candidate or a potential candidate, and that's it. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but that Austin's name appears on this list, so somebody has speculated it somewhere.
That's intriguing to me.
I think contrast how Austin is behaving and how Buddy Carter's behaving. Austin's a guy who, big fan. I'm a big fan. He just keeps his head down and does his work there.
Well, I think I've ranted about Austin before, and I just wish he would vote better. But that's neither here nor there.
Buddy Carter is showing up at the convention and speaking and is talking in red meat terms, which is not really Buddy Carter's MO before. So, yeah.
Scott, you were going to say something?
I'm thinking about what an Austin Scott campaign would look like.
I'm sure you were going to say something terrible.
No, I'm not. I like Austin Scott. I like him a lot.
Which is something terrible.
Well, yeah, you hate everything. That's
that's not entirely true.
Not entirely true. I love how
90% true.
Yeah, it's 90% true. I'm just thinking about the implications of what an Austin Scott campaign would look like, and what Buzz just said definitely rings true. He's not an attention grabbing type of guy, but he does. You got to understand the district where he comes from is it's very military and it's very agricultural. So he goes about representing those people, and because that's who votes for him, that's who he represents, and so he's really trying to advocate for agriculture and military, and that's what I see from him. But I think that has a wider appeal in Georgia. I really do. So it'd be interesting if he does.
Here's a problem for an Austin Scott candidacy. Now you've got Gary Black, the king of Georgia agriculture, takes away a big issue from Austin. Should he seek to run? So.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything about that at convention. I didn't see Austin Scott there either. So if you didn't show up to the convention as a qualifier for running for U.S. Senate, then he doesn't meet that bill. But Kelly Loeffler does. Kelly was there.
Well, maybe Austin also is thinking in terms of the convention is not representative of the primary voters themselves, which is maybe a reason he didn't show up. And just by the way, looking at this,
And he'd be right.
that's he would definitely be right. So just to note this real fast, if Austin looking at his seniority on the two main committees he's on, he is on armed services, and he is probably 6th or 7th, maybe 8th in seniority there. So he's about halfway up the pecking order on armed services.
Mm-hmm.
House Ag, he is second. He is next in seniority only to the ranking member.
Wow.
And
yeah,
on the Republican side, 3 terms unless you get a waiver. So
Yeah.
Austin would be next for ranking member. Just something to note there.
Yeah, that's a huge deal for him.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
a big deal for Georgia too, honestly.
Yeah, we need it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it considering the only other Georgian I think on that committee is Sanford Bishop. No, well, David Scott. David Scott's the chair of the committee, but Sanford Bishop is also on the committee. He is dead last in seniority on the Democratic side. But if you had Austin as the ranking member or chair of the committee, that would be a huge deal. You also have Rick Allen on the committee, but he's further down the pecking order in terms of seniority.
Yeah.
So just something to think about in terms of our friends who might run for Senate and who might not run for Senate. So we also have some new entrants in the races for the Republican nomination for Georgia 6 and Georgia 10. And we all saw, and apparently Scott missed the text message from our last podcast where I said, oh, by the way, Mike Collins is running for Georgia 10 again.
I officially announced.
Yeah.
Be that as it may, I sent his website to the two of you and said, oh, he filed his FEC paperwork. That was 2 weeks ago.
Listen, I have my finger in a lot of different pies. I can't keep up with all of this.
Hey, maybe
no pun intended.
Maybe don't use that phrase ever again.
Yeah. Well, I forgot for a moment your last name was Pie, but that's not what I meant.
Yeah. We'll say cake. How about that? Just say cake from this point.
I've got a lot going on, people. So when Jason sends me a text, I don't always read that garbage. So
screw you, man.
Wow.
Jeez, Lord have mercy. Can't please everybody. So anyway, Georgia 6 and Georgia 10. Our Republican candidates seem to be lining up. I haven't paid any attention to what's happening in Georgia 6. Georgia 10 is a lot closer to me geographically. I live like 2 miles from the district. So other than Mike Collins running, I haven't heard of anybody else who's jumped in. And then Georgia.
I have heard that a candidate who's not running, and this is a direct result of Butch Miller deciding to run for lieutenant governor, but Bill Cousert, longtime senator from the Athens area, who would have, if he had chosen, probably would have been a formidable candidate in Georgia 10, is not going to run. He's instead going to seek the speaker pro tem position, president pro tem rather, in the Senate.
In the Senate, yeah. Interesting. So any other candidates in Georgia 10 other than Mike Collins who have announced? And Mike,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We have Timmy Barr and David Curry, who just left the state revenue. The Curry team, by the way, has been all over me. They felt like my article on Peach Pundit was not fair. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it, but they felt like we weren't being fair. Whatever. We're a blog, folks. If you're a campaign team and you reach out to a blog and you start the conversation with you're not being fair, we're a blog. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not the AJC. I don't have journalistic ethics to handle.
Well, there's that, and also the fact that the three of us have wildly different opinions on things.
Yeah, you'll notice also that 3 different people wrote the announcements for 3 different candidates. So we all had a different perspective on what we're approaching. And this podcast and Peach Pundit is not backing any single candidate in that race. We know some of them better than others, but that doesn't mean that we're backing anybody. So
and professionally, considering the fact that I have to work with whatever office we elect, it's probably a good thing not for me not to take sides in primary races.
But they wore me out, bro. I'm not kidding. The campaign over there at the Curry campaign wore me out.
Welcome to the world of blogging, Scott.
If I don't think your candidate has a serious shot of winning and your candidate sucks, I will say something. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, I won't go that far. I just don't know the guy, and we found out because I saw a Facebook post with it in there. He didn't reach out to us to tell us that he was running. None of us know him personally. And so I wrote the article that way. And there you go.
There is another candidate, Matt Richards, business owner, sent out a picture of him with a sledgehammer slung over. Apparently he's a renovation.
We talked about him.
So he's in the race too. So.
We talked about him on the last podcast. I actually have his campaign website up right now. His campaign slogan is "Wreck the Left." So that's pretty interesting. We also have Mark McMain, who someone I had never heard of before. The ultimate Washington outsider is his tagline. He's also framing himself as a conservative for Congress, not necessarily a Republican for Congress. There's also a candidate named Andrew Albee, who's pretty interesting considering his campaign website is a LinkedIn page.
Is it a good resume at least?
Maybe it's yeah. I mean, no joke. His resume is actually on here. Like, he's a small group leader at Athens Church. He's an owner operator of Athens Cultural Development, program director at Action Inc., donor and marketing intern at Athens Area Community Foundation, graduate of the University of Georgia, and Scott, get this, also has a BA from the University of Cincinnati.
Well, good. I don't know why you would put your internships on your LinkedIn profile. That's an interesting.
Because he's probably closer to 12 than he is to 25.
Well, that was a question that immediately when you see an internship on a LinkedIn profile, you wonder how old the guy is.
That's entirely fair. His internship was literally last year. January 2020 through December.
All right. We'll talk about him in 4 years from now.
So
speaking of young potential candidates, Houston Gaines, the state representative, I guess in his second term. Does that sound right, Scott?
Yeah. One of the most. Go ahead.
So we'll see if he jumps in or not. But
yeah,
look, I guess it's not a surprise. An open congressional race attracts all sorts of people. 8 to 10 candidates is not a shock.
Well, the redistricting hanging over everybody's head is going to be, I think, in a lot of people's calculus. Once redistricting is finished and some of these lines are redrawn where you have two people in the same area that are going to be forced to run against each other, two sitting members, it might open up the door for them to go run for some other office. I think Houston Gaines would be a fairly compelling candidate. He was one of the swing votes that was necessary to bring the heartbeat bill home for Governor Kemp. And so I think, the governor's team would probably repay him graciously by supporting his efforts. That's just speculation on my part. I don't have any inside information, but I did hear his name over the weekend in that race.
So over in Georgia 6th, it's also pretty interesting because you have a bunch of rumored candidates, but not as many declared candidates. And the names I'm seeing are Harold Earls, Susie Boyles, Eric Welsh have all declared. There's a name here who I think everyone kind of speculates who is going to run, but maybe not in the 6, maybe in another seat, is Megan Myers Hansen.
Megan is in.
In Georgia 6 or Georgia 7? Because I thought I heard she was going to run for Georgia 7.
Well, at this point, she lives in the 6th, but regardless of wherever she lives, she's going to be in.
Okay,
she's running.
I just see the 6 getting a little bluer, not in redistricting, not redder.
It depends on a couple different things. You got to understand the 6 borders Cherokee County, and Forsyth. So there's opportunity for them to redraw the lines to make that more red.
Yeah, no, there is, but I feel like they're going to probably do that with 7 rather than 6, and that's kind of 7 is going to be or Bordeaux will be the sacrificial lamb in redistricting, and
and that could be very well what they do. They're going to have to draw the line somewhere. So, yeah. But regardless of wherever those lines are drawn, Megan Myers Hansen is in. She's in. Yeah. She's running.
And Buzz, were you gonna say something, buddy?
No.
I really appreciate your brevity.
But one of the just one other name that popped up over the weekend was Jake Evans, who is the son of Randy Evans, the former ambassador who's just come home and was the chairman of the convention over the weekend. So Jake is a young attorney, newly married, and was somebody's. I haven't spoken with him regarding whether or not he's intending to run, but he was mentioned.
Interesting. Well, we also have another, since Gary Black is running for U.S. Senate, we have an entrant into the agriculture commissioner's race, and that is Tyler Harper, who will be apparently running for the Republican nomination for agriculture commissioner. Never heard the guy's name, don't know anything about him. I'm assuming he was at the convention this weekend and
Yes,
schmoozing with Republican delegates and activists, trying to build up some grassroots support for what is going to be a run for this office. So, Scott, what can you tell us about the guy?
Well, so in true transparency that we try to practice here at Peach Pundit, I have shot a lot of deer on property owned by Tyler Harper. So just keep that in mind. But Tyler is a state senator. I think he was sworn in around the same time that I was. I think he came in the same class as I did in the House in 2013. He is a big ag guy. He's a fairly wealthy dude, owns a helicopter, and he's been known to fly that to Atlanta instead of drive from his South Georgia district. And I think what he's doing right now is just shoring up support back home and trying to keep other people from entering the race before he makes a formal announcement. But he and Senator Jones, Burt Jones, both hosted a complimentary suite, a hospitality suite over the weekend where they were giving out food and meeting people and drinks and just trying to establish some more name recognition. It was really obvious that the two of them both together were up to something.
Well, speaking of, well, Buzz, do you have anything you want to add there?
No, I think that's right. They're both young guys who have been in the Senate, as Scott mentioned, around 6 years. They've gotten legislation passed. They've built up a following, and they both of their families have money that could help fund statewide races, and both have had their eyes on these opportunities for a while now.
So speaking of Burt Jones, in the devil going places, Burt Jones and Brandon Beach have gone out to Arizona to observe the embarrassing and incredibly stupid statewide audit. No, you can roll your eyes all you want at me, Scott. It's dumb. It's embarrassing. It's grift.
Why is it embarrassing?
It's grifters grifting, and it's happening with the sanction of the Senate, the Republicans in the Arizona Senate. Not only that, it's the Arizona Senate Republicans have control by a thread of the entire legislature by a thread. McSally lost, which is not surprising. She is a terrible candidate, but and you also have Sinema there. She also lost to Sinema 2 years before. Their Republicans are hoping to pick that seat back up. I don't think they will, because Arizona is largely having the same problem that Georgia is, and that Republicans haven't caught up to shifts in demographics.
So you're saying too many Californians are moving into Arizona?
I mean, that's part of it too. Yeah, but I mean, that's part of it, but that doesn't tell the whole story. My point to all this is for a state that is where Republicans have to be very delicate, they are doing everything wrong. And this audit's an example of that.
No, look, we go to paper so we can look at stuff. Okay. So there's nothing harmful. There's nothing embarrassing about going and looking at the ballots. There's nothing embarrassing about that. What we're doing is just checking to make sure that the result was what it is. If they find something,
it depends on how you go about it. And there was an article the other day about a conservative talk show host who had been a big proponent of this, but now that it's been put into practice, this audit, he is saying this is the joke, and this is going to blow up in our faces, and it's going to harm all our candidates in the state of Arizona, because they're looking for the secret watermark that Trump supposedly left in absentee ballots. They're looking for shreds of bamboo because allegedly ballots were flown in from China.
Sure.
That's, and the company that was doing it, they've gone beyond the deadline that they originally had been given, and the company that was doing the audit said, "See ya." So it's who's in charge and what's, if you want to do an audit, that's fine. I don't agree with you.
Local officials in Maricopa County, Republican officials have blasted it.
Sure, they
are saying it's embarrassing. They are saying that the cyber ninjas, or whatever the hell they're calling themselves, they made mistakes that have essentially eliminated their credibility in this entire thing. Not to mention the fact they had no credibility to begin with.
Well, this is where I get worried, right? And this is because audits are, I think, going to be an important part of the process moving forward, and it's one that we're going to have to accept. That we're discrediting the concept overall of an audit, because auditing there's a reason why we went to paper here in Georgia as well as other states across the country. They move away from their old DRE voting machines is because we want to be able to go back and look. And we want there to be a permanent record.
Problem with an audit. No problem with an audit whatsoever.
Okay.
I have no
that's
problem
where
with an
I get afraid.
I have no problem with an outside group conducting an audit.
Right.
But I think, there's an attempt to do such here in Georgia. It's a suit brought forth by a guy who unfortunately has a lot of theories about 9/11 and Kennedy assassination
and Agenda 21 and
yes, on and on.
And the Clinton kill list.
But there's nothing in I don't know that there's anything in Georgia law that covers this kind of procedure. So we're on uncharted ground. So if we're going to do this, then let's do it logically and sensibly according to Georgia law, and not just let anybody who wants to conduct an audit say, well, I will conduct an audit and I will tell you what the results are.
Really great,
well,
really great article. Let me hold on a second. Really great article in Georgia Public Broadcasting, so gpb.org, and it's titled "Here's How Georgia Could Conduct a Forensic Audit of November's Election." And basically, the guy goes through everything and says, finally, it is nearly impossible to commit to have any sort of fraudulent activity with absentee ballots in Georgia's elections.
Well, you're welcome for that, by the way. But that being said, we created a system where we could go back and check. And what really concerns me, and I mean, I get genuinely concerned, is that when we poo-poo the idea of going back to check the results, even if what they're doing out there and what they're looking for is dumb, let's not poo-poo the idea of audits, because it's going to be a part of the process moving forward, and it needs to be done the right way. And I'll concede that it needs to be done the right way, and we need to be looking for the right things. But audits are a good thing, and we should never be afraid of going back to look. Ever.
I'm not saying that an audit by itself is a bad thing. I'm saying this particular audit, because it's a desperate grasp. It's a grasp by desperate people to try to overthrow or try to further cast distrust in what happened in November, and to some degree January as well. Scott, you can shake your head as much as you want to, but
they're not going to find anything, and so people
exactly.
So what's the problem with looking at it?
Exactly, and I'm telling you right now, why is there there's a lawsuit in the Fulton County lawsuit is happening in Henry County in McDonough.
I'll concede that that's dumb.
I mean, I grew up there, and to see, it's like they're turning Henry County Superior Court into a laughing joke. And Arizona is considered worse than anything else, but it's a laughing stock what they're doing down there. And the judge, Brian Amaro, what the hell are you doing? I don't get it.
Well, I think here's the problem, Jason, is that
I hate too much.
Well, that's one ingredient in the cake, as it may seem.
Thank you.
But that's not what the real problem is. The real problem is that you can't be afraid to go look. I mean, I will always advocate for any citizen, if they want to take court action and go into a court, the judge, he could throw the case out if there's no merit there. But if he thinks that there's an issue that is worth further discussion, then let it play out. Let us not be afraid of following the process. This is what we create the courts for, a time such as this. And it's not a joke to a lot of people. So let's go through this process, and maybe, just maybe, on the other end, they don't find anything, and somebody somewhere has their confidence restored in our election process in Georgia. Because regardless of where you stand, there are people who believe that it was stolen.
They can believe whatever they want to, and I'm not saying they can't believe that. What I'm saying is this is serious, because the things that were said between November and January ultimately led into people storming the Capitol on this conspiracy theory that the election was stolen. And I'm seeing, because I work in Washington, D.C., and I have to deal with these people, not the people who stormed, but congressional staff and members of Congress. I'm seeing how that has led to more partisanship, and just the simple, you cannot talk about the election and not encounter some of the strongest feelings I've ever encountered. Screw policy issues. Nobody even cares. They're basing whether you can co-sponsor a bill based on how you voted on January 6th. That is how bitter it's gotten right now. And people are playing a game with this. They're raising money off of this. And look, I am not someone who sits here and say, oh, democracy, democracy. That is not me. But I am sitting here saying that was the election. That was the result. Accept it. Move the hell on, because people have lost their life over what happened in November, and it's getting old. It's played out. You want to go find another grift.
I knowing the people who are involved in this, and I don't know, they're not my friends. They're not on my friends list, and they're not on my cell phone speed dial, right? But I've seen them I've interacted with them at the. I've interacted with them in the check my campaign disclosures. I've interacted with them at the Capitol, and I will tell you that even if they're wrong, they believe what they're saying, and it's not a grift for them. They're passionate and they're patriots. They believe what they're doing is the right thing, even if they're wrong. They believe they're doing the right thing. Allowing them the opportunity to go back and look is not harmful. It's not. I'm sorry that people in DC and inside the Beltway can't get that without holding it against a personality rather than a policy. Like, that sucks. And I hate that. And I think it's awful. But you can't be mad at people when they want to take a look and just make sure. How else are we going to hold our government accountable if you don't allow individuals, especially through the courts? We're not talking about storming the Capitol, Jason. We're talking about filing a lawsuit, doing it the right way. If they want to go and look, they should have the opportunity to go look. That's why we have the paper ballots to begin with.
We're not talking
we're not going to agree on that part, but we will agree on the impact it has up there. I think people in DC, they need to come back to Holly Springs, Georgia. They need to come hang out here for a while, because what you'll see is a bunch of people who are just more concerned with paying their mortgage, making sure their kid has a good school, and going to work every day. And they're not focused on this stuff. So the fact that they're making decisions based upon the election at this point is sad. It's just sad.
So we're not talking about storming the Capitol, because that has already happened. And
Sure.
the conspiracy theory that is now coming out of all this is that Trump is somehow magically is going to be president again in August or September or October, or name your month. There's going to be some coup, and Donald Trump and David Purdue and Martha McSally.
Not happening. Right.
Oh, it's not happening.
It's not happening.
But these people, the people who are doing these lawsuits, are putting in a false hope in Trump supporters' heads, because they're
Trump himself.
It's a cult of personality. And look, I know you agree with that. At least
sure I do. Yeah. Sure do.
But so you have gotten to a point right now where it is instilling false hope in people's heads that they're going to find one ballot. That one ballot. There was a story this morning that said if Trump just hopes that they can find one ballot that puts the credibility of elections in question. That's all they're looking for, because you can take that one ballot and you can turn it into 1 million.
And you know what? On the backside, they're not going to find it.
Buzz hasn't had a chance to speak during this.
I just want to read. I have no problem with audits. I have no problem with citizens, even citizens who hold views that are well outside the mainstream on all sorts of things, having their day in court and having the opportunity to make their case. But there's got to be some rules and parameters around this, so that and this is what I fear about the Arizona lawsuit. I don't know what rules and parameters have been set up around this thing, so that when this group comes out and says, here's what we found, that the general public will look at it and say, okay, yeah, I accept the results. Because if you really believe that, if a person really believes that Donald Trump is going to be installed as president in August, they're not going to accept the results of the Arizona audit, because the Arizona audit is not going to find that ballots were flown in from China or any other thing. They're not going to find fraudulent ballots. So that's at some point, you have to follow rules. You can't keep making up new rules, and that's what I worry about with these audits. We're making up new rules just to try to satisfy an ever shrinking number of people who are hanging on to something that's just not going to happen.
And a third of Republicans, according to a poll that was released yesterday, believe he will be put back in as president.
Yeah. Well,
I have a hard time with that. I'd have to see that the crosstabs.
I'll-
But bringing this back around to the original point, which was we have 3 people from Georgia who've flown out to Arizona to see this thing. And
did we mention that Vernon's out there?
Vernon's there.
Mention that. Can we? Is it possible? Can we just not talk about Vernon Jones?
No, we have to. We have to.
He's there.
Swipe. He's out there,
He's there
claiming that he's doing really important work while Brian Kemp is sitting at home here in Atlanta twiddling his thumbs. That's his accusation.
Yeah.
Governing the state of Georgia is twiddling your thumbs and not doing anything important, but looking at an audit in a different state that has nothing to do with Georgia is
keeping the state open during a pandemic so people could balance their public health concerns with their ability to pay their mortgage is not as important. Managing the pandemic was not as important. Making sure that Georgia's the #1 state to do business is not as important. Fighting for the unborn is not as important. Fighting for our gun rights is not as important. The list goes on and on and on. Yeah. Governor Kemp, wherever you are, you keep doing you.
Vernon's whole campaign for governor is, I'm loyal to Trump. You're not, Brian. And therefore you should vote for me.
And isn't David Schaefer there as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. The charade continues. Sorry, Scott. I still love you if that helps.
Well, the thing I just want to drive home, and I've said this already, but I want to drive it home, is it's not necessarily this audit. It's that the concept of audits should not be poo-pooed. And I feel like people jump to because this audit may be bad, that all audits are going to be bad in the future, and that's not acceptable to me. And I'm going to defend the concept of audits.
I again want to just one more time because we have 2 more topics to discuss, so I want to move on to those real fast. And I'll say I agree with you that audits in and of themselves are not bad, but there is a good audit and there is a bad audit, and there's a smart audit and there's a stupid audit, and this fits into the bad and stupid category.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
I'll let you have the last word.
And it ruins the prospect. It hurts the prospect of future audits. That's
so if there are any listeners left, I guess we should, after our thrilling discussion on audits. So Burt Jones, the aforementioned Burt Jones, is out there.
Yeah.
Brandon Beach, whose name we haven't brought up in a while, but he's another guy who seems to be thinking about running for something other than his re-election to his current post.
So you're talking about Senate leadership races.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be, or no, Burton.
No, Brandon is unelectable. Yeah. Brandon Beach will not be elected to a Senate leadership position. He is widely regarded as a joke within the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe a run for Congress. That's more of Brandon's a circus.
So Burt Jones, Brandon Beach, who else is talking about running, Buzz?
Oh no, I'm just saying these are folks who were out in Arizona who also happen to be people thinking of running for other offices.
Yeah.
Burt Jones, Brandon Beach, and Vernon Jones.
Yeah. Okay.
What I heard over the weekend at the convention is that, I asked Burt directly, what are you running for? Oh, I'm just having a good time is what he said. But several people, more than one, told me who are in his inner circle, he's running for LG.
Interesting.
Which would be a bullet dodge for Brian Kemp, frankly.
Yeah.
But sets up a Butch Miller versus Burt Jones race, and also creates a lot of downstream Senate leadership positions that will be open for people to run for. And maybe a Bill Cowsert tries to fill, maybe a Steve Gooch does. With
a special, remind me of the Senate rules, because I know they have to resign their leadership post if they decide to resign or run for something else. But
I talked to a couple of senators at the convention, and they told me that we were misinformed, that Senate rules do not force the pro tem to resign if they run. It was Butch Miller who forced David Schaefer to resign last time so he could become pro tem at that point, and he had the support of the caucus. Now, if Burt does get in, I think right now what I'm hearing is that Butch wants to stay pro tem, even though he's running a campaign for for LG. But if another member of the Senate gets in, to the race that's a Republican, that the caucus at that point will tell them all, you're going to have to step down. And now you have some ambitious people that are already in leadership that may force the issue, sort of like what Butch did with David Schaefer, and saying, you got to step down so that somebody else can run the show. You've got some people there who may push it to happen. So the Senate will be one to watch in the coming weeks, especially as Burt Jones makes his intentions known publicly.
And presumably
already a number of senators who are testing the waters for pro tem. Mike Dugan, Bill Cowsert, maybe Steve Gooch, Mike Dugan. Did I mention his name? But
you did.
They're folks are ready.
I don't know if Gooch will run for pro tem, but I certainly think he'll try to jump up from his spot as whip if a spot comes open.
So speaking of races in Georgia, and Scott, you can happily tune out now if you want to, because you said it before we came on the podcast. For those of you who watched the live stream may have caught Scott say this. He doesn't care about Atlanta politics, but Buzz Kasim Reed has filed the paperwork to run for mayor of Atlanta.
Yes.
So what do you think about that?
Don't call it a comeback. He's been here for years.
Didn't he deny that he was going to run for like months?
And fears.
Did he deny for months that he wasn't going to run? Yeah.
And then the somewhat surprising announcement of Mayor Bottoms decided not to run. Suddenly Kasim's coming back. I think he's going to have it won't be as easy as it was last time because of the number of people in his administration who are in jail or awaiting trial. I think that will be a very interesting dynamic in that whole comeback bid.
Yeah. Scott, do you have anything you would like to add?
I'm just here to listen to Buzz Brockway quote LL Cool J. That's what I'm here for. I don't care about Atlanta politics.
So we're butting up against an hour. I noticed that Scott and I are both wearing swag from prominent conservative or not conservative in my case, but prominent organizations. Scott's got Americans for Prosperity hat on. I have a Reason magazine.
I love that. Can you get me one of those?
You can go buy one on reason.com.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you just, but no, if I could also give a shout out to the Corona Week Cherokee Strong, the local business here in Cherokee County who makes these t-shirts, who tried to stay in business. And there were people who tried to cancel them. So Deadline Apparel in Cherokee County.
So the reason, by the way, I bought this shirt off of Reason. Matt Welch, although Matt is a friend and Nick Gillespie is also a friend, did not give it to me. So I bought it just like everybody else would.
Wow.
I'm just repping America, right? Mount Rushmore.
Well, for my
presidents and Teddy Roosevelt.
For my AFP hat, I had to get signed up for their mailing list. So I did give something for my hat.
So I'm kind of weird in Buzz, by the way. I've always wanted to go to Mount Rushmore, and then Freedom Fest is moving from Las Vegas to near the Black Hills. And part of me wants to go, but part of me hates Freedom Fest. So I think I'm just going to sit this one out, but
whoa.
We went last year. My family went last year. It's just a gorgeous part of the country.
Let's go. Let's do a podcast from here. Come on, let's go to Freedom Fest.
No. Freedom Fest, the only reason you go to Freedom Fest is to drink, and that is it. Which Scott is going to say, what's the problem?
Do you hear this, America? Jason Pye hates everything you stand for.
I like drinking. I just
drinking, Mount Rushmore, Freedom Fest.
I like drinking.
He hates everything.
I like drinking. I like freedom. I just do not want to go, and I want to go.
Let's go be festive about those two things.
I just don't want to go to Freedom Fest because it's a Trump love fest, and I'm tired of that.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought it was more about.
Have you not gotten the fact that I basically quit my job, left my old job because I hated Trump so much?
When is
that's none of my business.
What it's next month.
Okay. Yeah. So it'd be before Trump's reinstalled. So
yeah.
There'll be a lot of anticipation.
That's it. I'm out. I can't handle anymore.
You can't leave yet. You can't leave yet. Damn it. You have to see. You will stay there for another 2 minutes until we reach an hour, and then you can call. And then you can call it quits.
We need to wrap this up now. This plane is lost two engines and it's only got two left. So we need to land this thing.
Look, we scared off all the listeners anyway with our 2-hour talk on audits. So.
2 hours.
It wasn't. It was, but it seemed that way for
It's-
Jason.
it's-
He
it
felt
hated
like-
it. Yeah.
No, I just hate you. I mean, there
Yeah.
is
No, it's not just me that you hate, bro. It's not just me.
No,
Not
I was
just me.
for 5 minutes. I was concentrating all my hate on you. So
Oh, I felt it. It was hot.
It wasn't hot.
It was, yeah. my
That
ears
that
were
was
red.
that was me animated, but that wasn't me angry. If there's a there is a difference between angry pie and animated pie. And you'll notice I was smiling, and Scott, despite the fact that I said I hate you, I do love you.
Yeah.
And
I love you too, bro.
By the way, I did drink some of that Reformation Jude. It was very good. Thank you for the gift, by the way. And
yes, a product of Woodstock, Georgia.
with a 9.2 ABV, it nearly put me on my ass. So thank you very much.
You didn't drink all 6, did you?
I did not. I
Okay.
did not. I drank
Yeah.
like one, and then my buddy Nathan Lemer also drank a couple.
That is a beer for sharing if there ever was one.
Oh, for sure, for sure. All right, folks. We will make sure you download, like, and subscribe. You can find us at peachpundit.com. This will be on YouTube. It's also on Apple Podcasts, so make sure you go check it out. One of these days, I'm gonna get our Facebook page up and running. One of these days, I'm gonna get us on Google Podcasts. Hopefully, that will be this weekend. Next week, I am all alone. I have nothing else going on. I have nothing but time. So why don't you guys prod me to do things? So,
Okay.
And our listeners, you can tweet at me and tell me to do things. So anyway, peace out. Have a good rest of your week. Maybe we'll see you next week. Maybe we'll see you 2 weeks from now. We'll see. Take care.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.